If you have just opened ISO IEC 17020 20 to 26 edition for the first time, it is about 30 pages, and it is written in the flat, unhelpful language that standards are always written in. So, let me give you the tour I wish somebody had given me. In the next few minutes, we are going through the entire structure, clause by clause, so that when you go back to the text, you know what each part is actually asking you for, and which requirements are the ones assessors genuinely test. One quick thing before we start, and then I will leave you alone about it. Everything I am about to walk you through, we have already built for you. There is the full ISO IEC 17020 2026 edition documentation kit, 3 separate checklists, one for implementation, one for your internal audit, and one for the accreditation audit itself, and a complete online training course if you want to go deeper than a video can take you. All the links are in the description below this video. Right? Now, let's get into it. Let's start with the shape of the thing. Clauses 1 to 3 are scope, normative references, and terms. Useful, but nobody is assessed on them. Clause 4 is general requirements, and it holds impartiality and confidentiality. Clause 5 is structural. Independence, legal entity and liabilities, organization and management. Clause 6 is resources, personnel, facilities and equipment, and externally provided products and services. Clause 7 is process, and it is the biggest one. Contract review, methods, handling of items, records, control of data, reports, appeals, and complaints. Clause 8 is the management system, then Annex A, which is normative, so it is a requirement, and Annex B, which is informative. Know which annex is which. That single distinction catches people out. Clause 4.1, impartiality. 7 short requirements, and 2 of them do the real work. 4.1.3 says you shall monitor your activities and your relationships to identify threats to impartiality on an ongoing basis, and that this monitoring shall include the relationships of your personnel. The note then lists what counts as a relationship: ownership, governance, management, personnel, shared resources, finances, contracts, marketing including branding and sponsoring, and the payment of sales commissions for referring new clients. That is a wide net, and the note is careful to add that such relationships do not necessarily present a threat. 4.1.4 is the one people underestimate. If a threat is identified, you shall eliminate or minimize it, and you shall demonstrate how. Demonstrate in writing. And 4.1.7 bans remuneration structures that could influence inspection results. If your inspectors are on volume bonuses, read that clause again. Clause 4.2, confidentiality, and it is broader than most bodies implement. You are responsible, through legally enforceable commitments, for all information obtained or created during inspection activities. The note says those commitments can be contractual or a confidentiality policy published on your website or in your documentation. You must inform the client in advance of information you intend to place in the public domain. If you are required by law to release confidential information, you must notify the client unless the law prohibits you from doing so. 4.2.3 catches people. Information about the client obtained from other sources, a complainant or a regulator, for example, is also confidential. And 4.2.4 extends the obligation to committee members, contractors, personnel of external bodies, and anyone acting on your behalf, not just employees. Clause 5, structural requirements. 4 things to take away. 5.1 sends you to Annex A for independence, and the note allows different types for different inspection activities. 5.2.1, you are a legal entity or a defined part of one, and if you are part of one, you must be identifiable within it, meaning visible in the organization and structure. 5.2.4 is more demanding than it looks. It is not enough to buy insurance. You shall analyze the risks arising from your inspection activities, assess the potential liabilities, and assure the level of provisions is consistent with those liabilities. That is a documented analysis, not a policy certificate in a drawer. 5.3.2 requires technical management with overall authority for 6 specific things, including determining competence requirements and the performance of monitoring. In 5.3.5 wants documented duties, responsibilities, and authorities for every function involved in inspection. Clause 6.1, personnel, and this is the heart of an inspection body assessment. 6.1.2 wants a documented process for managing competence covering 6 stages: determining requirements, selection, initial training, authorization, monitoring, continual training. 6.1.3 lists 4 knowledge areas your inspectors need, to the extent required: the technology used to make the product or operate the process, how it is used or delivered, the defects and failures that can occur, and the significance of deviations. 6.1.5 requires monitoring at a defined frequency by authorized competent people against a program, and the note suggests basing that program on the risks and complexity of the inspections and the results of previous monitoring. 6.1.7 requires each inspector to be observed performing inspection, and 6.1.9 wants documented information demonstrating all of it. Clause 6.2, facilities and equipment. 4 things worth your attention. The note under 6.2.1 is unusually direct. You do not have to own the equipment. It can be borrowed, rented, leased, even provided by the manufacturer. But responsibility for its suitability and calibration status lies solely with you. 6.2.4 asks you to determine which equipment has a significant influence on results, and then uniquely identify it, subject it to in-service checks, and calibrate measuring equipment before service and to a program afterwards. 6.2.7 gives you 3 routes to metrological traceability to the SI. 6.2.9 is the modern one, and it is worth reading twice. If you use technology in connection with inspections, and it names computers, automated equipment, data processing, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and remote inspection techniques, you must ensure it is suitable, protect data integrity and security, and maintain it. In 6.2.10, defective equipment is segregated and labeled, and you must examine the effect of the defect on previous inspections. Clause 7 is the operational heart, and there is a lot in it. 7.1, contract review. Your procedure must ensure the inspection is defined, the item identified, that you have the capability and resources, that methods exist or will be developed, that instructions can be issued clearly, and that requirements were met. 7.2 distinguishes standard from non-standard methods, and the note is important. Anything you developed yourself, or the client developed, or any modification of a standard method counts as non-standard, which means it must be validated. 7.2.5 then lists 9 things your methods must address. 7.3 is handling of items, unique identification, checking the item is in a ready state, and protecting it from damage. 7.4 requires records timely enough to prevent loss, and that amendments be traceable to the original, with both versions retained. And 7.6 sets 9 mandatory content items for every report or certificate. Now, 7.7 and 7.8, appeals and complaints. I am giving these their own slide because bodies keep merging them into one procedure, and they are not the same thing. An appeal challenges a decision you made. A complaint is dissatisfaction with anything else. The standard gives each its own clause and its own documented procedure. Both processes must be publicly available. Not available on request. Publicly available. For appeals, 7.7.6 requires the decision to be made by, or reviewed and approved by, persons not involved in the decision being appealed. For complaints, 7.8.7 says the same, and then adds something pragmatic. Where resources do not permit this, any alternative approach shall not compromise impartiality. That carve-out exists for small bodies, and you should document how you use it. And neither process may result in discriminatory action against the person who raised it. In Clause 8, the management system, 8.1.2 requires 6 elements: policies and responsibilities, documented information, actions to address risks and opportunities, corrective actions, internal audits, and management review. 8.1.3 then says you may meet all of that by running a quality management system. For example, 1 conforming to ISO 9001. Note the wording carefully. It says the quality management system shall support and demonstrate consistent fulfillment of this document. Having the certificate is not the point. Covering the requirements is. 8.3.1 sets 7 rules for document control. 8.5 covers nonconformity and corrective action. And 8.5.3 adds extra duties when the nonconformity affects inspection work itself, including halting or repeating work, withholding reports, and deciding on the acceptability of work already done. And 8.7.2 lists 15 inputs your management review must consider. 15, count them against your last review agenda. That is the complete structure of the standard. Clause 4, impartiality and confidentiality. Clause 5, independence, legal entity and organization. Clause 6, resources. Clause 7, process. Clause 8, the management system, plus a normative Annex A and an informative Annex B. If you want the requirements turned into actual documents, the kit gives you the full system, and the implementation checklist takes you through it requirement by requirement. There are checklists for your internal audit and for the accreditation audit, and the training course goes deeper on every clause than I can here. Links in the description. Tell me which clause is giving you the most trouble, and I will make it the next video. Subscribe if you want the rest of the series.